Hello! If you're watching this, chances are you've been exposed to the rare anomaly and sport, yes, sport, known as yo-yoing. If you are already familiar with yo-yoing, this series will not be for you. It might be kind of boring. If you are new, starting out, and unfamiliar with the sport, then this is the series for you. So stay tuned, for this is something more complicated than you think. Welcome! This is my YouTube channel. My name is Corrales. You can call me by my real name or my YouTube name, my real name being Carl. I have been yo-yoing for over 7 years now, and I have attended over 10 competitions and competed in at least 7. And yes, yo-yo competitions are a part of the yo-yoing industry business. Over the years, I've probably accumulated over, let's say 100 yo-yos, many of which have not survived. You may be looking at that shelf behind me and thinking, hey, those look pretty cool. Where can I get one of those? Well, you most likely can't use those yet. These yo-yos are called unresponsive, and you will understand that later, but for now, just to make it simple, that just means it won't come back up to your hand. Later on in the series, I will teach you how to make it come back up to your hand using an unresponsive yo-yo. But for now, if you have never picked up a yo-yo, you'll need something like this or this. So, you guys are probably asking, what should my first yo-yo be? Well, this is a little thing to say. Do not buy a $100 yo-yo as your first yo-yo. I guarantee you, you will not know how to use it and understand the properties of it. But once you start getting into it more, getting the flow, hang of things, then you'd probably be able to get a $100 yo-yo. But as a starter, I do not recommend getting a $100 yo-yo unless you just want it to sit on the shelf and collect dust. So, my suggestion for a starter yo-yo would probably be something from a very popular company known as Yo-Yo Factory. Yo-Yo Factory is well known for a variety of yo-yos they have put out over the years since I believe about 2001. But me personally, I actually started off with a Duncan yo-yo. I'm sure most people have heard of Duncan yo-yos because those are very classic. I started off with a Duncan Imperial, which is a great beginner yo-yo. However, the Duncan Imperial makes a great starter yo-yo, but I don't recommend it for beginners because you can't progress with it. You see, the Imperial does not have a ball bearing in it, so learning tricks and performing tricks is much more difficult than it would be with a yo-yo that contains a bearing. And I'll explain that later. If you wanted a great yo-yo for progression and becoming better, I would recommend something like this. This is called the Yo-Yo Factory Replay. It is cheap, I believe $16. They come with a small bearing and tug response, and these can progress you. As a matter of fact, the 2015 USA National Yo-Yo Contest was won with this yo-yo. Some other yo-yos I can recommend would be something like the Duncan Flipside, the Duncan Pro Z, the Yo-Yo Factory 1, the Yo-Yo Factory Velocity. However, there are so much more on the market, don't take my word for it. If you can, you do a little quick Google search, beginner yo-yo for sale, and you can probably find hundreds of results in seconds. Now, since you know what to get for your first yo-yo, you need to know even what a yo-yo is. To put it simple, a yo-yo is made up of 2 discs and an axle with string attached to it that allows you to do tricks moving up and down using momentum and physics. So now I'm going to get scientific. Yo-yos use kinetic energy to keep them spinning. Yo-yos also use gyroscopic stability to keep the yo-yo on one axis perpendicular to the string to make sure it doesn't rotate and go off axis. The reason the yo-yo keeps spinning is because of something called momentum. It uses 2 types of momentum. The 2 types of momentum are linear and angular momentum. Linear momentum occurs when you are throwing the yo-yo down and it accelerates its spin while you are throwing it down because of the force. And the angular motion occurs when the yo-yo is at the bottom of the string spinning. Next up, you need to know what a moment of inertia is. The moment of inertia is the measurement of how much resistance is put on an object for its rotation. It also determines how long the yo-yo will spin, or as yo-yoers call it, sleep. The moment of inertia is determined by 2 factors: the mass of the yo-yo and how far the center of mass is away from the center or the axis of rotation. To put it simple, the heavier the yo-yo, the longer it spins. Just as a fun fact, the longest spinning yo-yo is by a company called C3 Yo-Yo Design based in Hong Kong, China. This yo-yo is called the BTH and is over 220 grams, which is extremely heavy for a yo-yo. Average yo-yos nowadays probably weigh about 66 or 65 grams. This yo-yo can sleep for over 30 minutes, which is crazy to think about it. While most yo-yos, all these ones on my shelf, can probably go to about 4 or 5 minutes. So that's the sciencey portion of this video. Now we're going to move on to what are yo-yos made of? Modern high-performance yo-yos are typically made of aluminum. To be even more specific, they use aluminum alloys. The alloys in this case that most yo-yo manufacturers use is what is called 6061 alloy. 6061 alloy contains aluminum, magnesium, and a little bit of silicone. One of the upgrades to 6061 is called 7075 aluminum, which is much stronger and much more durable. 7075 aluminum contains zinc, magnesium, and copper, which makes it very strong. But that's just what typical high-performance competition yo-yos are made of. For beginner yo-yos, they're usually made of hard, durable plastic. Sometimes the yo-yos are made of what is called POM plastic, Delrin plastic, and a lot more varieties of plastic. And this is just a little warning. If you are a beginner and have never yo-yoed before, I do not recommend you buying a full metal yo-yo as your first throw. Because if you do, chances are you most likely do not have perfect control over the yo-yo right off the first throw. So you would be risking injury a lot more than you would be if you were using a plastic yo-yo. So that's just a little tip from me. If you're a beginner, don't get a metal yo-yo. Start out with a plastic yo-yo just in case you hit your head. I know that happened to me a lot. Now that you know how yo-yos work and what they're made of, we gotta show you what keeps the yo-yo moving and what's inside of the yo-yo. And what's inside of the yo-yo is a lot more complicated than most might think. Alright, so here is an example of a high-performance yo-yo. This is called the One Drop Yo-Yo's Vanguard, made by a local shop in Eugene, Oregon. So, unscrewing it gives you all the materials you need. The first thing you notice is this big shiny thing called a ball bearing. This basically is what keeps yo-yos spinning for as long as they do. And without this bearing, yo-yos would probably only spin for about 10 to 20 seconds as opposed to 4 to 5 minutes. And you can see also on the inside of it this little groove here, which is called the bearing seat, or as yo-yoers call it, spacers. And in the center of it you can see what is called the axle hole, or the thread, to keep the yo-yo together without falling apart. And if you can see here, you can see these little rings on the outside of the bearing seat. These are called response pads. Response pads are used to help the yo-yo come back up when the yo-yo is unresponsive in order for it to be able to work. The response pads are typically made of silicone or some sort of rubber material that snags easily. But that's what's basically inside of a yo-yo. Now, this type of response that you see in here, the silicone response, is not the only type of response that you would find in a yo-yo. Some yo-yos have what is called a starburst response system, which means they don't have pads, but they have these little grooves you can see right here that snag the string on it due to them being very sharp and easy to grab. But this type of response is not typically seen on high-end metal yo-yos, rather looping yo-yos for what is called two-way, and I will explain what two-way is in a bit. So, now that we have covered the basic shapes of a yo-yo, we are going to go into the 5 main styles of yo-yoing. So starting off the list, we have what is called 1A, or single hand yo-yoing. Single hand yo-yoing, 1A, is the most common style of yo-yoing you will see at a yo-yo competition, as it's the easiest style to learn. This is when you use one yo-yo to perform intricate string tricks and movements in the yo-yo. The next style that people do that is the most difficult style is called 2A. 2A is when you use 2 yo-yos simultaneously to do what is called looping tricks, and with these you can do crazy maneuvers and like acrobatics. I know there's a video out there of a World Yo-Yo Contest freestyle where a guy did a backflip. It's crazy. With 3A, you use 2 1A yo-yos on each end and intertwine the strings to create intricate tricks. The next style is what is called 4A. With 4A, you typically use what is called an off-string yo-yo. With off-string yo-yos, they're typically much larger than 1A yo-yos and are used to use the yo-yo, as hence the name, off the string, to throw it up in the air and catch it and do a bunch of cool movements like that. And the last style, which is 5A, is when you take a yo-yo, but you take off the loop off your finger and you put a counterweight at the end of it to use maneuver and force physics to maneuver the yo-yo around and basically be a nunchuck master. I don't know. Those are the main 5 styles of yo-yoing, but all of them branch off into more intricate styles that I could probably explain in a later video. Well, that's the basics of yo-yoing. It's not as simple as you thought, was it? If you want to keep moving forward and progress forward as a yo-yo player, then stick to this series. In the next video, I'm going to go over some basic maintenance, how to throw the yo-yo, and how to perform some simple tricks. But for now, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the introduction to yo-yoing, and I'll see you in the next video.